Live your life, boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
Yeah, rear naked choke a Cocker Spaniel, bro. You know what I'm saying?
bro.
Change the neighborhood up.
Conspiracy Farm. Go. Check it out.
All right, man. Here we go. Off to the races once again. Another episode for the archives with myself and the champ. What's up, brother?
Oh, not a lot. Not a lot. Beautiful day down here in Iowa, so I'm chilling out. Was able to watch my 10-year-old swim this beautiful Memorial Day weekend, and honoring those who have lost their lives for don't have to agree with why they got sent there, but they signed on the dotted line and cost them their lives. So,
without a doubt, happy Memorial Day, everyone. Or
all that.
Yeah, hope everybody's enjoying the Memorial Day. And like Pat said, remembering those who paid that ultimate price. But, of course, there is a lot of other things going on in the world. Quite a bit. We're going to try to chip away at a little bit at it. Pat, you got a lot on your plate you wanted to get off your chest. What's going on in your mind today?
Oh, I see all these movers and shakers with millions of followers talking about, oh my God, we were, of course, talking about this COVID situation being a bioweapon. Shit, you and I were talking about it before January of 2020.
Yeah, we
were talking about it coming a year and a half before it hit, right?
Yeah, and honestly, YouTube, I got a message from YouTube that our episode with George Pardos and Del Bigtree just got taken down like the other day, and we did that episode years ago.
Yeah. So, it's very interesting just what we're witnessing, and nobody talking about the previous 50 years minimum that all viruses and vaccines attached to them were all bioweapons.
Yeah,
and
break that down
go,
a little bit of the history. You've been going pretty hard in the paint on that. Give us basically, your understanding of the history of bioweapons as it relates to vaccines, as you were just about to start saying.
Okay, well, I'm outside. I am near the train tracks.
I hear it
and
coming.
there happens to be a train coming, so just bear with me. But nonetheless, almost 25 years ago was when I was researching vaccine efficacy. I was digging in deep, man, and I was planning on having kids, and I wanted to know. And so by the time I got done with my research, there was no way that I could justify, given the risks and the percentages, that I was gonna do that to my kids. But anyway, after the fact, I know I made the right decision. And then roughly 14, 15 years ago is when I started researching patents on viruses and vaccines, and some really alarming stuff. And this was information stored in my brain for a decade and a half. And it's so weird that all the crazy shit going on, just fast-paced life, all that sort of stuff, like it all started to come back, and I started thinking about the smallpox and the HIV and, all of that. And anybody can go and Google, for instance, Google the patents on the HIV virus. And it's synthetics. They've added synthetics to alter it, to make it, contagious amongst humans. It's derived from, primates. It's originally, the good old zoology bullshit, right? So, all the way back to smallpox, and I think it was smallpox, then HIV, and then we got into the swine flus and the aviary influenzas and all that sort of stuff. And so every single one's been a bioweapon, every single one of them. But what they're not talking about either is, on top of that, is when I ask and have posed this question to a lot of really high-level geneticists, some of them considered the best in the world, and triple PhD that I talked to a couple weeks ago and a couple other guys, I asked point blank, have they been readying our DNA, because we know it's damaged DNA, have they been readying it? Because from my position and my research, they've been readying our double-strand DNA, the double helix, to attach the third helix to it. And they're like, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And what is that? Explain that. What is the third helix and the implications of this?
Well, the implications, if you go to, a lot of people will argue with you and say, no, because, number one, we know you can't patent things that exist in nature. So you can't patent an existing virus, an existing strand of DNA. You can't patent a tree, that exists in nature, or an insect or anything like that. But you can patent the process to alter something from nature, right? So when you patent the process to change a virus, well, now you own technically that virus, right? Because it's not natural. It didn't exist in nature. And so when we look at DNA, and if they alter the DNA through their synthetics, the self-assembling nanotech, the hydrogels, everything they put together for the mRNA, the third strand of the DNA attaches to the dual helix and becomes a triple helix DNA. Well, now they own you, right? Because they've set precedents already in alterations of things in nature, and they own them.
Right.
So that just because you're human doesn't disqualify you from then becoming property of these pharmaceutical industries, of these corporations.
That's kind of like, I don't know how similar, but sounds like, Monsanto, if their, whiffs of their pollen or whatever gets whiffed down to other farms and they come and test your family farm and it has their stuff on it, they can take your product or even take over your farm.
Well, they file lawsuits against people, berry farmers. Yeah, of course.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because their whatever genetic sequence of their pollen or whatever that crap is winds up on your stuff. Like they now then own, kind of like you're saying, if you get injected with this stuff, they now own you.
Well, and the human DNA, which is a two-strand DNA that makes us human, well, when it becomes a triple helix, are you then, because you become property of the corporation, are you then considered, because you're their property, you're no longer human? What are you, a Borg? Are there no longer human rights violations on you at that point? This is the sort of stuff that. Well, and
are you any longer?
Are
you afforded the laws of regular human human rights, et cetera? Like you said, it's definitely a slippery slope, man.
Well, and the fact that you and I have birth certificates and have a social security number, we're not afforded in the end. We're just mini corporations underneath the corporations.
Which we kind of already are via our social security number. If we get into that conversation, one of our top conversations on the farm with Todd McGreevy and Corey Eve and you and myself about the 2 or 3 different United States. Yeah, it's kind of it's heavy, man. It's definitely heavy.
Yeah, so it's when you dig into the weeds on this stuff, and then we talked massive agriculture corporations who have weaponized microorganisms to put them in soil. How do they alter and genetically modify everything from the microscopic level then on up the food chain, right? That's some really, really scary stuff and some very heavy implications from that activity. And, when we know that the pharmaceutical industry has agreements and contracts with the Department of Defense, what makes us think that the agriculture arm of the pharmaceutical companies would not have the same?
Spooky, man. Totally spooky when you drill down it. And something else, man, I thought was you had talked about, and a lot of people talked about during COVID, and Terrence Howard, who was just broke the internet the other day when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Something I thought of you when I heard him say something about it. He was talking about spike proteins and how, you can elaborate more, but he was talking about how they go in and they shut off certain genes that are supposed to be on the lookout for abnormalities, cellular abnormalities, et cetera. But you say it goes deeper than that.
Well, think about all you need to do is heavy metals and synthetics damage the DNA by themselves.
Right.
They've been doing it. They've been shutting off people's immune systems. That's what HIV is, right? So, a lot of people now, you see the advertisements on TV all of a sudden again en masse about HIV medications because the vaccines with the mRNA has basically shut down people's immune systems. And there's so many different, what is it, over 1,100 adverse events that have happened that were documented, the Pfizer documents that they were forced to release. There's so many adverse events and such serious consequences for taking this vaccine that it's like Russian roulette. How do you want it? Do you want to get blown up? Do you want to get shot? Do you want to drown, suffocated? How would you like to die? Because one of them's coming. We're just not sure which.
Well, and again, I've seen it in the numbers, but again, Terrence Howard mentioned this on JRE. He was talking about the increased percentage and the increased rate of, name it, pulmonary embolism, heart attack, myocarditis. I mean, just this over-the-top increase of all of these kind of ailments, stroke, blood clots. It's absolutely next level. Turbo cancers. I mean, it's through the roof, the numbers. And I don't know if this is directly related to the vaccine or the spike proteins or a combination of the two, but the numbers, I mean, the truth is in the numbers. The numbers don't lie.
I think people aren't surviving the installation. There's an installation process that they go through, and some people are just not surviving it.
Mm.
And in my particular opinion, through conversations with a lot of really, again, I'm lucky to be in conversations with the top plant geneticists, the top human geneticists, and ironically, they talk a lot of the same language because genetics are genetics, right? So it's very interesting, but it's very troubling, and most people obviously don't want to have that conversation. They don't have the historical references to be able to dig into it with any kind of insight anyway.
Right.
They haven't been following it for a quarter of a century like I have, and you have, and just not paying attention. And so that's the thing is, again, my mistake, horrible mistake, was to just assume that most people with an education would have been at least doing a little bit of research on this stuff. But there's, the vast majority of people are still lining their kids up for every vaccine known to man.
Well, in the face of all of these agencies that said to do this and this, have did their own kind of mea culpa and been like, yeah, the vaccines really didn't do shit. The mask really didn't do shit. Yeah, 6 feet was all bullshit. I mean, ivermectin actually worked. I mean, this whole rewriting of history now, like you said, the evidence, I mean, they're all saying it now. They're admitting it. But like you said, I work with people who still rock masks. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Well, here's the thing, though. They're not saying that it's out and out just killing people. They're not going there. They're certainly not, probably don't have the research background, the politicians and the religious leaders and, all these, whatever, movie stars and music people and, all these people with pull in society who were condemning everyone who wasn't going to get it. Obviously they just don't have the background of research that we have. So, well,
I remember when we talked about this during COVID, when we were crushing it during COVID, I remember saying, I don't know which episode it was, but I was saying, yeah, there's going to be enough time lapse where they're not going to be able to make the correlation, causation correlation connection to it being because of the vaccines, or, you know what I mean? It took long enough to manifest that you're like, well, this can't be from something from 5 years ago because, you know what I mean? So I think the time
I think by design, the 24-hour news cycle and running people through wars and making it a reality show. And,
right.
People just get ground down to not being able to remember the last, oh my God, when was the last hurricane? What was the name of the last hurricane?
Right.
What was the last war we were in when 1 million fucking people died?
Right.
That's the sort of shit that they've been doing to us to condition us to not be able to keep up with anything.
Right.
It's just heavy and hot fire, at such a rapid rate that people just simply can't keep up, and people just shut down.
Well, and constantly distracted, and that's, again, I think a function of the demoralization process that I say, again, they want you in a state of not knowing whether to scratch your watch or wind your ass type thing, because it's just, you can't make sense of anything. And we're very easily distracted, as we see.
Right. Well, and the nice thing is there's solutions to all of this. You can you can repair your DNA. You can reverse the damage. You can clean these things out of your cells. You know, through NIH studies, people just, if you hear this, Google NIH study on antioxidants reversing DNA damage. And then they can go dig into that and research and realize that, yes, antioxidants have been proven to reverse DNA damage and get heavy metals and synthetics out of the cells. You know, something as simple as grape seed, concentrated grape skin, micronized grape skin, is a very good high-level antioxidant that can go into your cells and assist in removing heavy metals, synthetics, and fixing your DNA. That's just one of many, many antioxidants on the planet.
Which is natural, too. Better. Yeah, let medicine be, food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food type thing.
Yeah, which is even better if you can find them that were not grown with petroleum-based NPK fertilizers and, of course, pesticides and herbicides, because those are synthetics and have heavy metals in them as well. But it's super important to find real organic, whatever you can find anymore on this planet, or grow it yourself. Number one. But that's a lot of the, you know, stuff that's been going on, and there's work by a lot of experts right now to put together some really good protocols to assist people in repairing if they were vaccinated, and also protecting against those who were vaccinated who are now shedding all over everybody, which, you know, is a fact. That's just
what's kind of the end game? Because you talked about, like, this fall. I mean, do you feel that, you know, there's going to be some level of, I mean, for lack of a better term, like activation of some of the? What do you see as the end game with what they've given to a lot of people in society, i.e., this vaccine?
Well, God only knows, but the genetic alteration is a massive red flag. And so, again, if they alter your DNA and you get through it, how are you, you know, we know, you'll remember, what was the name of the program in the CIA to vaccinate people and disconnect them from source, from creator, from intuition, from all of it? Do you remember that? I remember in the auditorium, the CIA agent giving the speech. It was many years ago. Many years ago.
The only thing I remember was Tuskegee, but that wasn't that function. Wasn't that?
No, that was just to torture and kill innocent Black Americans. just that.
Yeah.
Just, you know, let's experiment on people. But anyway, so a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that this fall and winter, with them, you know, of course they're announcing, they already know what's coming because they injected it in people, that, you know, virus X, pandemic X is coming, you know, this fall, this winter, and that it's going to be pretty bad. So we have to ask ourselves, what did they inject in people? The liposomes, the liposomal delivery system, what organs, what receptors on what organs were the liposomes engineered to go to? We know there's been massive amounts of reproductive issues, stillborn, miscarriages, you know, a lot of brain aneurysms, a lot of heart attacks, you know, just a lot of really horrible things happening. So a myriad of receptors of different organs probably would be my best guess, and in talking with experts. And also, you know, what's in the lipids, because they haven't even opened yet. So the lipids carry a payload. Are they sitting somewhere, you know, and a good number of them haven't opened. So what's in them and what happens? What are the side effects?
How do they open? What prompts them? Like, what's the catalyst to get them open?
Well, the thing is lipids are, when I was holding a conversation with who was the, you know, I obviously can't, you know, people are like, oh, you got to reveal your sources. No, I'm not going to reveal my source because, yeah, they probably want to kill him. But, you know, when he talks and says, because I was learning about lipids and liposomal delivery systems 2 decades ago or whatever, I had a little bit of experience, so I could at least understand when the geneticist that I was talking with was saying lipids are in different sizes. They can be designed differently. They can be bioengineered to do different things, open in different ways, all those things. But some people are saying that potentially the towers, the 5G towers, could pulse and open them up, which that's not a crazy thought. It's not a crazy thought given what they've done and knowing what we know, that could potentially be the activation that causes a lot of these problems. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, we just speculate. We just speculate. But I did see something else about a possible preparing for a new H1N1 strain. Did I see that recently?
Well, I mean, think about this. They are trying to destroy the milk and cattle industry now, and at the same time, the chicken industry and turkey industry, by saying that cows can fly now, Jeff, because they can now catch bird flu. And it's in their milk too. So that's only possible to go across a species like that if it's been weaponized, if it's been patented and altered.
Would that be the same as like influenza? Because is that not essentially an influenza? Is that not an avian strain of the flu that's been weaponized, or no?
Well, I mean, they've got the list. I mean, from swine, from pig, from birds, from apes, chimpanzees and what have you. So, it's just zoology in general. Let's find something that makes monkeys sick, and let's turn that sumbitch into a human virus.
Your mic sounds a little muffled. Did you cover it up a little bit?
I did not.
There you
go.
There you go. Better.
But no, that's what they're doing. That's the psychopaths that we're dealing with in the bioweapons labs worldwide.
And they definitely are psychopaths, man. No shortage of them. And speaking of psychopaths, let's God, I mean, this stuff in the Middle East just seems like no end in sight. I see Hezbollah just unloaded a little payload of their shitty rockets over to Tel Aviv, supposedly. I mean, this sounds like no end in sight. And then as this all started, quote unquote, somewhat, with the Houthis, Iranian-backed Houthis doing all this shit in the Red Sea. And then, of course, the October 7th kind of spiraled this whole thing into where we are now. But, of course, there's a monster backstory to all of that. But within the last week or two, the Iranian president, his helicopter goes down. Of course, that was mechanical failure. What say you, champ?
I would say that Yemen and a lot of these other countries have been vastly, just completely destroyed, and they're back in the Stone Ages. And I don't know how many Houthi rebels were trained in operating drones or where they were trained at or who funded them, but somehow they're now operating drones that can fire weapons and all this other shit at U.S. ships and whatever, the media will print anything anymore. So you know what I'm talking about. It's there's some funding coming from somewhere that seems to be i.e. 9/11 type stuff where it's pretty obvious where the funding came from and to prompt Americans to support a war. And at what point, what heinous crimes are they willing to go to after we know the false flags that have caused so many wars, all the wars for in modern history anyway. What are they willing to do this time around to get American citizens wound up to support, blowing Iran off of the map and going after Russia and getting us into World War III? This is
not only the timing and the country. I mean, wasn't the president of the fucking Maldives. This was the president of Iran, who was at literally the geo-military strategic focal point of the potential for World War III, and his fucking copter goes down. And it's not crickets, but everyone, I immediately speculate, who is these guys going at quote-unquote war with? And, I'm thinking, obviously, a few lettered intelligence agencies with a few letters. But it seems obvious. Of course this didn't go down from mechanical fucking failure.
Well, this is all the more reason to drive a 1975 Ford pickup truck that can't be commandeered computer-wise.
True that.
All the more reason to find a de Havilland 1949 de Havilland Beaver airplane and fly that instead of a modern helicopter. God only knows. God only knows. But it's Oh, there was bad weather. There was inclement weather, and they flew right into it. Where highly trained pilots are going to go. You know what? We got a storm coming. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go around. Yeah, we're going to go around.
Right. Well, again, the timing is quite suspicious, and the seemingly escalation, in my opinion, this goes, it's manufactured by design, of course, but you're talking about this multipolar world order of Iran, Russia, China, etc., versus the West. Essentially, I think that's where this is going and spiraling towards. But the world consensus on what the Israeli government, the IDF, is doing in Gaza is, getting a lot of pushback from, the UN, the International Criminal Court. You don't usually see as much pushback on what Israel does as what you're seeing right now. What are your thoughts on the kind of tide turning against, I guess, one of our supposed closest allies?
I think it's very interesting that the citizens are awake enough to push back. I don't know how much of the UN pushback is just for show or, acting. We know a lot of acting's going on in all aspects of world and national government. That's obvious. Just really ugly people with poor acting skills is what we're witnessing. But I just see a lot of the citizens are waking up. It's where it's the Russian citizens, the Chinese citizens, the Iranian citizens, the American citizens. Listen, we do not want war. We don't. No. Everybody just wants to raise their kids. We do not want war. And I can tell you right now, my kids are not going to war. Not going to happen. They're not going to some far off land and going to war. And a lot of Americans are saying that right now. And the American government has been talking and hinting around at drafts and all of this stuff. It's like, go ahead, draft my kids. They're not coming. They're not going.
Well, if history has shown us, they don't give a fuck what the American people have to say. This government has been kind of hell bent on war for quite a while and have no problem with manufacturing them. As we always say, man, war is a racket and is always funded both sides by what I like to call the IFCs, the international financial cartels, multi-country, no single country, old money, right. old money, call them what you want, Illuminati, black nobility, whatever the fuck. But yeah, we don't want war, but the psychopaths do. And we're already in some aspect of war. We've already talked about Boone Cutler and Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and many people talk about nonlinear warfare, asymmetrical warfare. We've been seeing that play out for quite a while now, whether it's financial, whether it's chemical, biological, covert action, etc. We've been, whether you want to call it World War III, go ahead, but we've been in a war for a hot minute. But we're seeing it get more kinetic. In your opinion, where do you see it going? And the alliances?
Well, if they continue on the route that they're on, a lot of Americans are finally waking up to, the agriculture chemicals poisoning us, the food processing companies poisoning us, the pharmaceutical companies poisoning us. I think that people are waking up to that fact. Are they willing to get off of their medications? There's a lot of people that have been on SSRIs for so long that if you took them off of them, God only knows what they're going to do,
Right.
So that's the problem is so many Americans are so sick, so scared, so polluted, so confused that, false flags, talk about selling a false flag, the emotional charged, how people are programmed at this point, they'll fall for it, right? A lot of Americans are going to fall for it, and they're going to be like, yes, let's go to war.
Well, and if it ain't broke, don't break it. Like, they're reading from the same playbook because it's been very effective. Not to repeat what we've always talked about, the social engineers and the behavioral scientists who kind of engineer this shit, they know it's better than kind of we do. So they know exactly what buttons to push to elicit whatever reaction from us. And you're exactly right, man. It's coming, man. And we're probably, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think definitely a false flag. And especially with the election coming up, we have such a short time for I don't know, maybe China to invade Taiwan, for other things to start tricking off globally. And as we watch this inept fuck that they call our president do nothing. And another thing, so that one, we talked about that kind of off air before. This show, this in professional wrestling, the big angles, they have a big blow off, what they call it, the big pay-per-view. So at the end of the year, they do a WrestleMania to blow off all the hot angles. In the real world, we call it presidential elections. So every 2 to 4 years, we have these angles between whatever good guy and bad guy or whatever, and then we have this blow off, which is the election, because it's all horseshit, of course. What are your thoughts on how this plays out? Does Slow-Mo Joe even make it to November? And if he doesn't, who comes in? And whoever faces against Trump, how does the Trump versus whomever play out?
I've said it for, I don't know, almost the whole time that Biden's been in, is that they're going to torture Trump and make him a martyr. And while they're torturing the citizens, and the citizens are going to connect with Donald Trump, and they're going to see him as their hero, which they do, right? And even in New York City, we saw people waiting outside, tens of thousands of people who couldn't get in. Everyone of every walk of life across the country is suddenly jumping on the Trump bandwagon for the most part. And it's obvious now, I would hope, what's going on. But I fear that, Americans are so sick, so obese, so scared, so disconnected from intuition that, so let me explain it this way. Go back to the 1930s. Germany is invading countries, and Americans are seeing this as, before the movie that they're going to watch, they're shown war footage, right?
Yeah.
Of, this is what the Axis powers are doing, the evil Axis powers, and invading Poland, and they're, doing all this crazy shit. And
1942, U.S. troops stormed the beaches or whatever.
Yeah, so that was all the
Movie tone
information
news.
that people were getting.
Yeah.
It was in movie theaters and newspapers and, a radio if you had one, and, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, now there's the internet, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information you have to decipher through that information. Now the added thing is so much more. Of course, it was already happening in the movies, but the pharmaceuticals altering people's perceptions, right? And so emotionally being programmed, all these sort of things. Now it's at such a height, and there's such a huge percentage of Americans that are on pharmaceuticals, or just in your water. You're drinking pharmaceuticals and agriculture and cleaning products and every other chemical known to man in your tap water. So it's, every American is being impacted, you and I included, if we're drinking tap water.
Oh, yeah.
So how much easier it is then to program the people with false flags. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, I just look at it from a lot of different angles, and I think that they've got to have some false flags coming. People are going to be getting sick this fall and winter. How do I know that? Well, they told us. My God, the experts have told us. Yep. Everybody's going to start getting sick this fall and winter. Look out.
Well,
and we know it.
Something we've talked about even years ago as we watched the Summer of Love, which did happen under Trump's watch. But I think part of that overarching social engineering aspect of the last few years is they let it swing so fucking far to the left, and we're all like, whoa, they're burning down cop shops in cities. How is this happening? I think that was allowed to happen. Again, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, so it can swing further to the right. And like I always say, man, be careful of the precedent we set on how cool we are with this clapback if Trump gets in, because once they set that precedent, are cool with that precedent of it happening to people they don't like, it's just a matter of time when it happens to people they do like. So if Trump were to make it in, how do you see that play out? Do you think it swings super authoritarian right, or he comes in and kind of keeps things balanced? Is he going retribution style and coming for scalps? How do you see it playing out?
God only knows, but we've got, guys like, what's his name? Ivan, what's his name?
I forget, but I know what you're talking about. The guy who has the 80,000 or something man army that wants to be deputized and go arrest these people.
Yeah, go after 350 minimum people responsible for the pandemic and the treason, and which we know they're guilty of. We know there's a lot more than that. There's thousands, tens of thousands who, again, religious leaders, university heads, NCAA employees, coaches across the country, mandating these shots for their people, for their tribe, for their religious group, for their athletes, for whatever. They got paid money for that. And most people aren't aware of that yet.
Right.
But when they become aware of it, fully aware of the amount of money you got paid, and sold them a line of bullshit, and they got injected with this bioweapon and did it to their children, God only knows what they're capable of.
Well, and those those Fauci
who knows?
emails just came out the other day about how they're trying to do what they can to obfuscate their transmissions and do secret coded messages or whatever the fuck they were saying. But there were certain emails that were pretty, I wouldn't say, for lack of better, pretty damning as far as them knowing that where the thing came from, gain of function, etc.
Yeah, and Fauci's been at this since the 80s,
right,
with HIV, and coming up with a protocol of AZT that killed several 100,000 men. I mean, it's along with knowing it was a bioweapon to begin with. This is the type of shit we're dealing with. These are the lunatics that we're dealing with. And so, you and I were laughed at, ridiculed, minimized, banned, everything else you can imagine when we were telling people this was all coming and trying to explain it. And here we are. This is not, there's no debate. There is no debating.
right.
If somebody takes an opposing side to what we're saying, they're completely out of it. They're not living in reality. They're just not. And it's sad, but they just.
Well, there's a lot of people, like you said, doing that very, very thing, whether mental illness or SSR influence, or the sophistication of this thing this reality or whatever this psyop called reality that mainstream news. I mean, it's not to get all esoteric about it, but I liken it to like a spell. People are under a fucking spell who are still wearing masks and regurgitating this nonsense, even though the authorities who told them to do these things said, no, you ain't got to do that shit no more. People are still under this spell, if you will. That mass kind of Stockholm syndrome we always talk about.
Well, because, they're terrified, dude. They're terrified. And, all you have to do is walk around. And I genuinely feel bad for people because they didn't know. There's a lot of people out there don't realize they do workouts, they eat right, they can't lose weight. Well, they will divulge to you if you ask, for a doctor that knows, things like Oxycontins that people have been on for 20 or 30 years cause weight gain. That's just one of the many pharmaceuticals that cause obesity to happen. It's just that's what's happening. And then, how many millions of Americans are diabetic now, and they can't lose weight. They can't figure it out. And so, even vast majority, 95% or more, are all type 2, which normally through diet and exercise, you wouldn't be diabetic. But they just get on medications, take the easy route, and that's what they do. And it's a pretty slippery slope around, to say the least.
And again, having access to the information, you can look up the fact that the third leading cause of death in the United States is people being under a doctor's care or the medical industry. So it goes back to kind of our inherent kind of slave to authority. Oh my God, you have a white coat and a fucking stethoscope. Go ahead and tell me what's up, because I sure don't know. Using all this complicated language. I don't know what you're saying, but just give me the pill to make this go away. You're right. People just line up for it.
It's like, hey man, listen. Well, I've had conversations with people, and it's heartbreaking. Where it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go get surgery. And I'd say, well, there's things out there that might remove the inflammation, the things that are causing the inflammation. Right. If you put some concentrated nutrients into your body and that'll pull that stuff out of you that's causing that inflammation, you might actually not have to get the surgery. And
save yourself a couple bucks.
Yeah, and I've had people do that and follow through and go, "Oh my God, I canceled my surgery. It's incredible." They're not going to remove my thyroid. This is incredible.
Right.
Things like that. But then there's other people that will go, I'm going to go ahead and have, 17 feet of my intestines removed, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, dude.
I'm sure
Bro,
that
do
happens.
what
That
you
has to
gotta do.
happen all the time because people are probably scared shitless, and you
Yeah.
know, like they don't want to run that risk of whatever kind of homeopathic treatment or, like you said, fighting it through something like addressing inflammation and free radicals, etc. That actually, like you say, cause, and like science says, cause all of our dis-ease in our bodies based off inflammation. But yeah, a lot of people are just scared shitless, man. Most times when you start worrying about your mortality and shit like that, it's a tough one to ask somebody to just roll the dice on,
Yeah, I had a guy.
a non-allopathic treatment.
I had a guy yell at me when he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "I finally got to see the doctor," and I go, "Okay, so what did he do for you?" He put me on 3 medications, OxyContin, and some other stuff. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." So, there might be a chance where you don't have to keep taking those if you, clean up your diet a little bit. Just cut bread and pasta out of your diet for, shoot for 30 days. Go for 90, but, shoot for 30 and maybe put some of these nutrients in your body and, see if that you get to the point where you don't need those. And he got mad at me and he yelled at me and he goes, "Hey, when you become a fucking doctor, you let me know." And I go, "Oh, all right, cool."
Yeah.
Go, let me know, but since I'm not a doctor, you let me know. You go next time you go see your doctor, ask him what his plan is to get you off those synthetic medications. Just go do that. And next time you see him, make sure you ask him.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm sure he's got a plan to get you off of those. And then about a week later, he called me and he goes, "Hey man, let's. I think we should talk." And so it's all I can do is plant a seed and just walk away.
Yeah,
just walk away
for real.
And just hope that they choose, to at least give it a try, because I don't want to see people hurting and be lifers in that industry, and because once they got their claws into you, they got you pretty good. And so it's just it's unfortunate, but right now we have to deal with the shedding for all those people out there that have children in themselves that chose not to get the treatments that they started handing out in 2021. Now we know it's a fact, they're shedding on us, and again, I'm frustrated, I'm sad. I don't hate these people. They got duped. But we need to protect ourselves from the shedding, and those people that are regretting what they did, because a lot of them did it obviously to keep their jobs and things like that, there are things out there to hopefully assist in getting synthetics and the heavy metals that these self-assembling nanotech components are made of out of your body. So that's really, I just hope that they can do that, because, once it seems like everybody's starting to figure out that those people are walking bioweapons, we're catching wind that things are starting to go towards, like, do these people actually need to be isolated, from the rest of society? I mean, there's like, we're just slowly catching wind of, hey man, you don't want to go around big crowds because there's a lot of people shedding,
And wouldn't that be insane? A complete inversion of that reality. If everyone who was suspected of having COVID had to isolate and sequester and do all that for days and days, but now we're, like you said, with us starting to understand the spike protein and what that means. Wouldn't it be crazy if the script gets flipped and the people who actually did get it and who are potentially public health threats through their shedding have to get whatever? I mean, I'd hate to say like a FEMA camp, you know what I mean? Just like placed somewhere and isolated from society.
The script is flipping, and people are realizing a lot of the people. It has to be a vast majority of the people that got them are now regretting it, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
A lot of them are, and then to know that you are a spike protein manufacturing facility for the rest of your life, that's a real problem for the rest of society. It's a real problem. That poses a real threat to the rest of humanity.
I'll be anxious to see, because as you said, and as we've seen, there's been a huge spike, no pun intended, of all these different ailments that we listed earlier before, and we are starting to get a more comprehensive understanding of the effect of these spike proteins and what this vaccine could have done. So we'll be anxious to see in the next several months, if not years, how that understanding, if that does turn into some kind of, I don't know, viewing people who got vaccinated again as some kind of public health threat. Because like I said, that's not going away. They're going to continue to produce those spike proteins. And if we really, really sink our teeth in and make that aha moment understanding, like, yeah, you fuckers are shedding on us. And this is no bueno. We can't have this. You have to be removed from this. I mean, I don't know how else you would do it if we honestly recognize these people are public health threats and they are doing this to other people through these spike proteins. I don't know. I'm speculating, but it'd be interesting to see.
Well, we know that there are solutions. There are solutions. So that's the nice thing is solutions do exist. So
yes, sir.
That's really what it comes down to. But anyway, pray for the country on Memorial Day.
Absolutely.
All the people out there who lost loved ones in their service, and yes, all the veterans who served with them. We think about you guys because you lost friends. So yeah,
without a doubt. Enjoyed this one, champ. I hope everybody got a little something out of this. Living in a crazy world, crazy times, as always. And we're always trying to be here to navigate this crazy motherfucker we call life. So with that said, champ, any final words?
Hey, that's all, man. Great talking to you and great conversation.
Absolutely. Peace and so much love, guys. You know what it is. There'll always be more. Take care.